Hello and welcome to the subject of Introduction to Linguistics. In this first lecture, we will talk about first understanding language, primitive notions about language, definitions of language. So let's start and discuss the topic. This is our first topic, that is understanding language. What is basically the language? Look at some points. We have three important points. The first point is the English word language derives from a Latin word lingua, which means tongue, speech, or language. Look here, this word language, it is an English word. It comes from a Latin word lingua. In Latin term, we call it lingua, which means tongue. Tongue also means speech. It may also be referred to as language. So basically, language means tongue, speech, or language as it is. Go to the next point. Point number two. The word language is also referred to codes. In this sense, a language is a system of signs for encoding and decoding information. Look here, the second point is all about what is language? Language is a system of codes. That is why it is being referred to as codes. When you write A, when you write B and C, what are they? They are just shapes, they are just codes. So, in this sense, a language is a system of signs. A language is a system of codes. So, through the through the shapes of A, B, C, different languages have different signs, different shapes, different ways of encoding and decoding. Encoding means input information, and decoding means output information. Means that when you encode some signs, some codes of language in a systematic manner, they will give you some meaning, and that you will be able to decode. That is to say that you will be able to communicate. So decoding information is basically communicating information. So therefore, language is also referred as system of codes, a system of signs, and these system of signs help us encoding and decoding information. And the last point in this section is that language is an exclusively human property. Look here, language belongs to human. No other creature in the world, they have the language. They cannot speak. So language basically belongs to human beings. It is human property. Humans have innate powers, a natural power to use the language and speak language in the way they want. So these are some of the basic points about understanding language. So the number one point is that it comes from a Latin word, and the Latin word is lingua, and it means tongue, speech, or language. Second point, language is a system of signs, a system of codes, and they help us in encoding and decoding information. And the third point is language is an exclusively human property. Language is made for human. Human has created language, or language has made human existence possible, in either way. Now we move on to the next concept, that is to say primitive notions about language. What are the notions about language? What are the main ideas about language? What people since generations, they have been thinking about language. So we are going to discuss about that, what primitive notions hold about language, what oldest opinions hold about language. And these notions, these ideas are divided into two different categories, two different parts. You can say that there are two different opinions about language, about how language originated, about how language came into birth, how language came into existence. And the first is belief in divine creation, and the second is natural evolution hypothesis. Look, belief in divine creation means that there are people who believe that language is the creation of God. And the second one, natural evolution hypothesis, it says that no, language is not the creation of God, language is an evolutionary process. So let's talk about these two different ideas about how language originated. So the first is belief in divine creation, and let's talk about this. Look, belief in divine creation, those who believe in this system, those who believe in divine creation, they believe that language is the gift of God to humans. Only humans, God has given innumerable things to people. A language is one of them. That is why we call it language is the gift of God to humans. There is one more thing to keep in mind is that, look here, that this is a strong belief. People since long, they have been believing, they have been in faith that like many other things created by God, language is one of the things created by God. That is the point here. The second is, according to Judo-Christian Islamic beliefs, Adam gave names to all living creatures. Look, those who believe that language is the divine creation, language is a gift from God to humans, and according to this belief, like Judaism, Christianity, or even Islam, they all believe that Adam gave names to all living creatures. That is to say, when God created Adam, and Adam is the first human being on the earth, after God created Adam, then God also made Adam speak certain words to recognize the objects, to communicate, and therefore, in this sense, language is the creation of God. Then we have another point in this direction, magical properties of language, believe in special powers of language that help in controlling people, objects, and spirits. Look, there are also people who believe that language has magical properties. It has special powers. If the language is not the creation of God, the language will not have the special powers of influencing others. Because the language has the power to control people, to control objects, to control spirits. How? Now, for example, if you know magic, if you read certain words, and you can be able to control people, influence people. Now, with the help of language, you can even make objects do what you like we have in the computer, like we have in the scientific system of technology. Then, with the help of language, we can also control spirits. You make prayer, you read verses of the holy book, and all these things imply that the language has a special power. Language has magical influence. This special power and magical influence in language, where does it come from? How it happens? It's not by science. It's from God. Unless or until the God has not given that special influence, the language cannot have that much effect upon the heart and mind of human beings. Therefore, language is the creation of God. Therefore, language comes from God. It is the gift of God to humans. This is basically the point about those who believe in divine creation. But now we have the second group who says that no, language is not the creation of God. Language is a process. Natural evolution hypothesis means that language has naturally evolved, has naturally come into existence, slowly but surely. How? Let's read. It can't be proven that language is as old as humans. However, wherever humans exist, language exists. Look here, there is one mistake. W should be in the small letter. So it cannot be proven that language is as old as humans. People believe, scientific thinkers, they believe that it's not necessary that when humans were created at that point of time, the language was also created. Or had that been the case, when the human child is born and just after the birth, the child does not speak. Had that been the case, that when the human is born and the human starts speaking, then any child that is born should speak, but the child does not speak. So this, it cannot be proven that language is as old as humans. It's not scientifically proved. It's almost wrong. We cannot say that when a human was born, the language was born. If that is the case, when the child is born, then the child must speak, but the child does not speak. So what does it mean? It means that language is not as old as humans. This is about the scientific thinking about language. However, this is almost everyone believes in, that wherever humans exist, language exists. Of course, language is the product of human society. Of course, that is for sure to happen. Now go to the next point. Second point. At some point in their evolutionary development, humans acquired a more sophisticated brain which made language invention and learning possible. In other words, at some point in time, humans evolved a language acquisition device. Look, according to this point of view, they say that at some point in the revolutionary development, look, the scientific theory believes that humans came into existence after thousands and thousands years of their existence. Before, they were like monkeys, they behaved like apes, then slowly they grew up, they got mature, physically they got the shape of human beings. After that, when the physical shape became perfect, then they had the sophisticated system of brain, and then they started using brain. After they started using brain, then they thought about using the language and inventing various other things. So the scientific system of human existence, they believe that at some point in their evolutionary development, means that during the process of human development, which took thousands and thousands of years, in this process humans got a more sophisticated brain. Means when the body developed, in conjunction with that, human brain also developed. When it developed, then humans started thinking that now we have the mind, we have the brain, we have the thought, we can think in a much better way. But how to think, how to organize ideas? Therefore, let us invent language, let us make learning possible. So at that point of time, after thousands and thousands of years of struggle and wait and evolutionary development, then this sophisticated brain made humans invent language and make learning possible. And they believe that at some point in time humans evolved, and it is this slow development, evolutionary development, in this process of time humans evolved a language acquisition device, what we call LAD. So according to natural evolution hypothesis, they say that language is not the creation of God. Why? Because language has evolved after thousands of years of struggle and evolutionary development of human being. Nothing in this world has happened abruptly and suddenly and immediately. Humans have struggled hard, humans have invented, humans have thought, humans have worked hard over that invention, and then certain things have become developed. So Language is one of them. Language is like any other things which human has invented and has made things possible for them to do. So according to natural evolution hypothesis, language is a slow development. Language is not the creation of God. So in my opinion, both the ideas about the birth of language seem credible. If you have the logic from the religious point of view, you will say that no, language is the creation of God. Because if language is not the creation of God, then language could not have that much magical and what we call special powers of influencing others. At another point of time, when we talk about scientific system or natural evolution hypothesis, we come to believe that no, language is not the creation of God. Of course, everything is created by God in that way, but language is not the direct creation of God. God did not send a CD or any book of language directly on the earth and told people, look, you read the language. Had that been the case, we all could have spoken the same language. But we have different languages in different societies. It means how? It means that societies have made language possible. The need of the society has invented the language, has made the language possible. So in that way, natural evolution hypothesis seems very logical. Anyway, there are two different opinions. It depends upon you, upon your personal scientific spirit, which way you go. But my advice, whatever ideas you stick to, try to defend your arguments from that perspective. That makes sense and that looks credible. Okay, so this is about primitive notions about language. Now we move on to the next, and that is definitions of language. There are hundreds of definitions of language. Here we have selected three most important definitions of language. The first is, according to Henry Sweet, language is the expression of ideas by means of speech sounds combined into words. Words are combined into sentences. This combination answering to that of ideas and to thoughts. This is according to Henry Sweet. He very simply defines about language. Number one, language is the expression of ideas. And by means of speech sounds, we use speech sounds, and with speech sounds combined into words, then words help into combine into sentences, and then sentences combined into our expression of ideas and thoughts. This is about definition of language according to Henry Sweet. Now we take another example. Bernard Bloch and George L. Trager define a language is a system of arbitrary vocal symbols by means of which a social group cooperates. So language is a system of arbitrary vocal symbols. Arbitrary vocal symbols means that we cannot say that certain symbols are permanent in the language. Different languages have different vocal symbols and systems. Therefore, we call them arbitrary, not permanent, not universal. So a language is a system of arbitrary vocal symbols by means of which a social group cooperates, and of course, by the help of which a social group cooperates, talks, communicates, and so on. Go to the last definition. Sapir says, language is a purely human and non-instinctive methods communicating ideas, emotions, and desires by means of a system of voluntarily produced symbols. Look here, language is a purely human, number one. Language belongs to human. It is a human property. This is number one point in this definition. Second point, language is non-instinctive methods communicating ideas. Non-instinctive and instinctive. Instinctive means anything that you do instinctively, it happens spontaneously. Like for example, closing and opening eyes. Sometimes you are sitting and you are shaking your leg. These are all instinctive behaviors. There are some behaviors you do, but you don't know you are doing. These we call instinctive behavior. That is instinctively happen. But language is not like that. When you breathe, it happens instinctively, spontaneously. So language is not like breathing. It does not happen naturally. For language to happen and for language to use and speak, you have to be very careful. So it is non-instinctive methods. Communicating ideas, and of course language helps us communicate our ideas, communicate emotions and desires by means of a system of voluntarily produced symbols. And we communicate our ideas, emotions and desires by a system of voluntarily produced symbols, by the system of symbols. And those symbols are voluntarily, arbitrarily, not permanent, not universal. Different languages have different symbols. So these are three definitions. You will have many definitions. You can choose any definition you like and try to understand and try to keep in mind. I think this is the end of this lesson. Thanks.